Good afternoon, everyone, and I welcome you all to the 64th session of eNishchit. And it's indeed a pleasure to see all of you joining and very, very encouraging. So we hope more people from Northeast are also joining. I see my friends from southern part of India. They've already joined. Welcome you all. So I have with me our team. So today we have an in-house expert with us. So she's a very dear colleague, and she's a senior specialist in our NITRD itself, Dr. Saroj Meena. So can you please say hi to all of us?
Hello, everyone.
So she has over 8 years of experience in respiratory diseases, and that includes everything in respiratory, be it sleep, ICU, critical care, or be it TB itself, which she's going to talk about today. So I'm sure we are very excited to have her today and learn from her experience. And apart from that, our your panel, and we have our team members, Mr. Ajit from Share India and Mr. Prateek from ECO, who will be helping us in supervision and logistic part of it. So I welcome you all once again. And please, we are pulling up the pre-poll attendance. Kindly mark your attendance. As you mark the attendance, just a brief about what we are going to deal with today is, so we have a case of TB hepatitis, TB ATT-induced hepatitis, so which is like such a common problem that we encounter that is almost on daily basis that we see. Anybody who's practicing TB, who's giving anti-TB drugs, it sees it on every second, third day basis. This is such an important thing, and we are very excited that we have that discussion and today, and I'm sure we all are going to teach each other and learn from it and learn from our expert. So please mark your attendance, and then we'll put up the case. Dr. Upasna was supposed to moderate today, but she's not well. So maybe, hopefully she'll join us in the next session. Okay, so now we can move on to case presentation. And with great pleasure, I invite Dr. Prasenjit Saha, Senior Medical Officer, MCH Kolkata. Kindly present your case. Please share your screen.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll request Mr. Ajit for sharing the screen. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for inviting me. And today's case is about a gentleman, 47 years old. Weight was 42 kg when he was registered with Medical College ARTC. And the reason for case presentation today is a case of daily ATT-induced hepatitis. The date of ART registration in MCH Kolkata was 10th of September 2020, and the date of ART initiation was 13th of October 2020. Date of TB confirmation was 27th of September 2020, but the date of ATT initiation was 18th of September 2020. And the type of TB detected was TB and microbiologically positive. And past history of TB was not present after we elicited the history. And IPT, regarding IPT, we cannot start IPT till the ATT is not over. So we are waiting for the ATT to be over. Other details, medical history and other histories. Patient was suffering from fever for 1.5 months, followed by dry cough. He did not ever have respiratory difficulties. So he was referred from the private center to the government hospital. And he turned out to be ICTC reactive on September 10th of last year. And his SARS-CoV-19 test was also negative on 5th of October 2020. He also presented with oral candidiasis without any difficulty on swallowing. His spouse was tested for ICTC and she turned out to be non-reactive, and she was asked to go for a ICTC test after 3 months, which also turned out to be non-reactive. And regarding daily ATT was started from the chest department from 18th of September 2020 on clinical ground. And the CBNAT, that is Gene Expert from the private, was made available to the group on 27th/9/2020. So that on clinical grounds, suspicion ATT was started, and it was confirmed after around 7 days. Around 9 days, it was confirmed. Liver enzymes were raised. If you see the LFT reports as on 24/9/2020, it was raised. The liver enzymes were raised Hence, on September 25th, all ATT drugs were stopped because it was a case of ATT-induced hepatitis. On 12th of October, a modified combination of ATT was started by of our hospital. That is around 17 days from the start of after stopping the drug. The modified drug included levofloxacin 750 mg plus ethambutol 800 mg plus INH 300 mg. Initially, TLD was started, that is tenofovir, lamivudine, and dolutegravir was started on 13th of October 2020 as patient was not on rifampicin. As we see, the patient did not get rifampicin in the modified package. So there was no need for extra dose of dolutegravir. And another thing we had to remember was that his CD4 was below 50. According to the NACO guideline, we need to start the ART early under proper medical supervision. So we started it on 13/10/2020. On 20th of October 2020, rifampicin 450 mg per day was added to the existing TB drug by the chest department. Hence, looking into this factor, an extra dose of DTG 50 mg after 12 hours was also added to the TLD regimen on the same date from the ART center. On 20th of November, the continuation phase of ATT was started with 4 pills that includes 3 FDC HRE, as advised by the chest department. If you notice, his initial body weight was 42 kg, whereas at the point of continuation phase, his body weight was 54 kg. So it was raised. Physicians from the chest department advised the patient on 11th of February 2021, that is this year, to continue the continuation phase, the CP phase, for a total period of 12 months with HRE. So we are continuing that. Presently, the patient is doing fine. He is doing well. His appetite is good with increased CD4 count and increased body weight. As I have just mentioned, initial body weight was 42. At present, he was 54 kgs. His CD4 count was at the start of ART initiation was 42. That is on 10/9/2020. And his second CD4 done at around 5.5 months is around 137. That is into 3. It's threefold increase on 19th of February 2021. So third CD4 was not done because we are still waiting for 6 months to go. Viral load, we did not do viral load because we need to go for 6 months of ART. The patient has to consume 6 months of ART. At the same time, he's in active infection. So we would rather wait before we go for a viral load test, and 6 months should go. Now let's go into the laboratory lab reports. On 5th of August 2020, there was a USG abdomen which shows upper abdomen within normal limit with marginal hepatomegaly. On 12th of August 2020, serum creatinine was 1.02. The total bilirubin was around 0.51. SGUT was 39, SGPT was 51, more or less normal, within normal limit, more or less. And the urea was around 24, hemoglobin was 10.5. On 5th of September 2020, HSCT thorax shows right hilar mass with mediastinal extension. There was limb adenopathy and query neoplasty. And they had suggested, next page, please. Next, they had suggested bronchoscopy. Suggestion was bronchoscopy by the radiology team. On 7th of September 2020, we had gone for the Hep B and Hep C tests, and both turned out to be non-reactive. On 24th of September, the total creatinine was 0.9, total bilirubin was 1.1, and SGOT was 216, and SGPT 161. 3 times the upper limit. And so it was stopped. And urea was 29, hemoglobin was 7.2. On 11th of October 2020, bilirubin came down to normal, that is total is 0.55, SGOT was 42, SGPT was 39, and hemoglobin was 9.3. So we see out here, from after 1 month, more or less, around 17 days, it came down to normal, within normal limit. And on 29/10/2020, SGOT was normal, that is 19, SGPT was 25. And CBNAT, as we see, sputum, on 27/9/20, MTB was detected, reef resistance was not detected. And after intensive phase, we had asked the person to go for a AFB at DMC. It turned out to be negative. Result was negative. That was on 19/1/21. And the end of IP was around 19/11/2020. X-ray chest on 3/8/2020 was no focal lesion. Interstitial markings was NAD. On 10/10/2020, prominent vascular markings were noticed, and prominent hilar with right hilar perihilar opacity was noticed. On 19/1/2021, prominent bronchovascular markings were also noticed. Prominent hilar was there, and right hilar nodular opacity plus left upper zone nodular opacity was noticed. It can be a case of iris, because although the patient was clinically doing well, CD4 is rising, clinically he's fine, but due to this nodular opacity and lymphadenopathy, it can be a case of paradoxical iris. That is what I felt. And ART regimen presently, as I told you, my learned guest, is TLD plus extra dose of DTG 50 mg after 12 hours every day. It would go on till the patient is receiving rifampicin. The moment rifampicin is taken off, the extra dose will be stopped. ATD regimen at present is 4 pills, 3 FDC HRE. Present body weight is 54 kgs, I've told you before. He is on CPT and other medicine. Initially, he was on fluconazole 100 to 150 mg for 2 weeks because he had oral candidiasis, and he's not getting it now. So its issues for discussion was ATD-induced hepatitis, and it can be a case of iris as well. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I must congratulate you. It was such a well-presented case. Everything was meticulously worked out. And the way you explained why you did every step, I mean, what investigation, it's actually left no room for any confusion. So thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. So as we pull up the p-test, I will just ask if any of the participants, they want to ask the case presenter any question. They can ask any of the participants if they have any confusion, even though it was so well presented. I'm sure everything is crystal clear. Just to summarize, the case of 47-year-old male, and he was started on ATT on the basis of the dry cough and fever clinically, but which was later microbiologically confirmed. And he was also started on ART to get as he had a very low CD4 count, and that's what's recommended to start ART as soon as possible. So we have taken up this case because this person developed raised liver enzymes after starting off ATT. So we are going to discuss how to deal with this and what to keep in mind when we have ATT-induced hepatitis in today's presentation. So till then, please, before we have the dialectic, please can we all do the p-test code? It's just anonymous. Nobody knows who has answered what. So please, I request all of you to attempt the question. Okay. So now with great pleasure again, I would invite Dr. Saroj Meena, subject expert, to give her dialectic.
Thank you, Dr. Ananya, and good afternoon, everybody. I'll be briefing about the causes of ATT-induced hepatitis and how to manage, how to diagnose ATT-induced hepatitis. So let's see how much I'll be able to clarify it, and I hope my presentation clears all the doubts which are there. So drug-induced liver injury is the commonest thing which is being observed and usually goes unrecognized and is still a challenge for the clinician. Drug-induced hepatotoxicity is the most commonest adverse drug reaction which is leading to interruption in the treatment of TB. Isoniazid rifampicin and pyrazinamide are the essential component of TB treatment, and all these three drugs also have hepatotoxic potential. Next slide, please. So there are different types of liver damage can be caused by these drugs, and we can briefly can divide them into idiosyncratic damage, which dose-dependent toxicity. If it doesn't give the patient giving overdose of the drugs, then it can cause dose-dependent toxicity, induction of hepatic enzymes, drug-induced hepatitis, or allergic reaction, which are usually seen in the initial phase of the start of the treatment. So, what are the risk factors? Why some patients develop hepatotoxicity with ATT and the others doesn't develop? So it is usually seen in 15 to 20% of the patient. We commonly see that they develop hepatitis or they develop deranged liver enzymes after start of the ATT. So what are the risk factors for them? The first foremost is the advanced age. So elderly patients, they develop more toxicity as compared to the younger age group. Female sex and moderately or far advanced or extensive disease, which make them malnourished, leading to hypoalbuminemia, malnutrition, alcoholism, underlying liver disease. If the patient is already suffering from hepatitis C virus, hepatitis B or C, and yes, the case in discussion is the HIV case, and HIV is itself predisposes the patient for developing hepatotoxicity. I'll come with the reason why HIV patients are more predisposed for developing hepatotoxicity as compared to the other patients. Acylated phenotypes, they say slow acetylators, they have more predisposition for DIH. NET activity and glutathione as transferase activity. Next. So the risk increases 3 to 5 times among the patients who are already having viral hepatitis or having HIV infection as compared to those patients who doesn't have the underlying comorbidity. So HIV infected patients, they become susceptible due to many reasons. So one of the reasons is opportunistic infection. So we can also see from this case, like the case under discussion, the patient had oral candidiasis and for which he was having started on fluconazole. And then another good reason, these patients, they do have substance or alcohol abuse history in the past. And definitely the foremost is the drugs which are involved in the heart regimen. They have inter-drug interactions, and all the drugs which are involved in the heart regimen, they also have hepatotoxicity. Rifampicin hepatotoxicity is usually associated with cholestatic pattern, with the elevation in the serum bilirubin levels and alkaline phosphatase concentration, while the hepatotoxicity due to isoniazid and pyrazinamide are associated with elevation in the serum transaminase concentration. So if we suspect a patient who is developing hepatotoxicity, this can give us a brief idea. If we see elevation in the bilirubin levels and the alkaline phosphatase, then we can get a brief idea that rifampicin may be the culprit drug. While if we see the elevations or the derangements in the transaminase concentration, AST and ALT, then we can consider INH and pyrazinamide may be the culprit drug. So increase in the serum transaminases, AST and ALT levels after 1 month is usually contributed to the pyrazinamide-induced hepatotoxicity. While if we see the early rise in the transaminase level within the first 15 days, they are usually contributed to rifampicin and isoniazid. In our case in discussion, we have seen that the liver enzymes were deranged within 1 week of start of ATT. Combined TB-HIV treatment is often complicated by overlapping toxicities, as I already mentioned, and drug-drug interaction. Drug toxicities, including hepatotoxicity, has been seen as the major cause of TB-HIV treatment interruption, and that has been we have seen in this case also. Secondly, the concomitant use of antifungals like fluconazole, which is often seen in HIV-infected patients, is also a risk factor for development of ATT-induced drug hepatotoxicity. So INH is the isoniazid which we give to the patient is a prodrug. So once when it is taken, it goes into metabolism happens in the liver, and it gets converted into toxic metabolites like hydrazine, and so INH-induced hepatotoxicity is mostly due to the toxic metabolites like hydrazine, which happens the metabolism happens in the liver. And rifampicin induces hepatocellular dysfunction early in the treatment time phase, resolved without even discontinue the drug most of the time. and the mechanisms still unknown to us why rifampicin causes hepatocellular dysfunction. The combined use of rifampicin and isoniazid is associated with an increased risk of hepatotoxicity. So why this combination is they have a synergistic effect when it comes to hepatotoxicity. So why so? Because rifampicin induces isoniazid hydrolase enzyme, so which increases the production of hydrazine, which is a toxic metabolite of isoniazid. It's little biochemical is going towards less of clinical, but like we need to understand this also. Okay, why rifampicin causes synergistically toxicity when it's given with isoniazid. So this increased production of hydrazine with concomitant given of rifampicin isoniazid leads to increased toxicity, and especially seen in slow acetylators, which may explain the higher toxicity of the combination. And rifampicin also interacts with with most of the antiretroviral drugs and affects the plasma levels of drugs as well as risk of hepatotoxicity too. So if a patient develops hepatotoxicity, how will we diagnose the patient? So this is the most important thing. So asymptomatic increase in liver enzymes is usually seen in around 20% of the patient when they are given 4-drug-based regimen. But if the patient is asymptomatic, therapy need not to be altered because of modest elevation of the transaminase. But patient may need to be watched closely. But if the presence of any of the following criteria is there, then we need to interrupt the therapy or we need to put the patient on modified ATT. So one of them is the rise of 5 times the upper limit of the normal levels of AST or ALT. So transaminases raising 5 times is definitely an indication to stop the treatment at that particular moment. Or a rise in the level of serum bilirubin more than 1.5 milligram is another indication to stop the treatment, to interrupt the treatment. And any increase in AST or ALT. So we are not talking about 5 times or 2 times here. So if there is any increase in the levels of transaminase level from the pre-treatment level, along with the history of anorexia, nausea, vomiting, and jaundice, then we need to stop the treatment till the symptoms subside or the transaminase levels comes to the baseline level. Broadly, it can be graded into mild, moderate, and severe, depending on the elevation in the transaminase level. So when we say if the mild, so we see that our transaminase levels are more than 5 times the upper limit of the normal. And moderate, it goes up to 5 to 10 times the normal. And severe, anything more than 10 times, we can grade it as severe hepatotoxicity. Next. So drug-induced hepatitis is also seen, although it's not in the discussion phase, but I thought I should bring it into notice also. So it is also seen with the second-line anti-TB agents. So most commonly agents which are involved for drug-induced hepatitis in the second-line ATT are the ethionamide or the prothionamide, and in around and para-aminosalicylic acid PAS. Cycloserine does not appear to be associated with hepatotoxicity, but should be used with caution in patients at risk for alcohol withdrawal seizures. So once we have made the diagnosis, how to treat it? So first and the foremost step is to prompt discontinuation of all the hepatotoxic drugs. So in our case, yes, discontinuation of isoniazid, rifampicin, and pyrazinamide, the 3 hepatotoxic drugs in the ATT regimen. The 3 drugs regimen containing ethambutol, levofloxacin, streptomycin may be started until the AST and the ALT levels returns to normal, then or less than 2 to 3 times the upper limit of the normal or near baseline normal. So meanwhile, we can start with this modified drug regimen. If the patient is sick or the disease is severe, then we need to give something. So we can start with this altered regimen of ethambutol, levofloxacin, streptomycin, and while withholding the hepatotoxic drugs, isoniazid, rifampicin, and pyrazinamide. Or we can stop all the drugs without giving the supplementary regimen also. So another potential causes of abnormal liver function should also be ruled out, like consumption of alcohol, acetaminophen poisoning, viral hepatitis, gallstones, and biliary obstruction. So that also need to be kept in mind, and we need to rule out before we jumping on directly onto the ATT-induced hepatitis or hepatotoxicity. Once the liver function test returns to baseline, or falls to less than twice the normal, potential hepatotoxic drugs can be restarted one at a time with careful monitoring between the resumption of each agent. So how to resume these drugs? Can we change the slide? So we have different reintroduction regimens also for the same by the different societies. So these are the three are the most common regimens. So first and the foremost can be patient can receive maximum doses of isoniazid, rifampicin, and pyrazimide simultaneously, and if he tolerates, it can be continued. Or we can start by following the American Thoracic Society guidelines. They say that you start with rifampicin and then followed by isoniazid after 7 days. And in between, you have to get a liver function test done. If it doesn't show any elevation in the transaminase levels, then we can continue with isoniazid and then followed by pyrazinamide after 7 days. And all with the full maximum doses as per the weight band of the patient. The BTS guidelines is little conservative when it goes to reintroduction of the drug. So they say that INS, RIF, and pyrazimide gradually escalated sequentially after the maximum doses of the preceding drug. So like you can start NSZ with 50 mg, then gradually after 3 days, you repeat the LFTs and then increase to 100, then 150, then 300. But then it has its own disadvantage that if we keep on increasing reintroduce these drugs in this sequential manner with dose increment, then it will take a long time. So, but although the studies says that all the three arms of reintroduction of the ATT are equally efficient, equally successful, and with almost equal relapse rate of 5 to 6% of ATT-induced hepatitis again, DIH again, after reintroduction of the regimen. So like this time when there was a lockdown situation, we have seen many patients in our OPDs who are coming in almost at bilirubin of 7 and 8. And I've seen one or two of patients we lost also because of hepatic failure, because they reached so at such a last time because there were no follow-up of the dot center during this lockdown phase, and these poor patients, they have to follow the instruction which were given to this patient that you have to take the treatment, don't leave your medication, otherwise TB will not be cured. So that is one side of the dot center. The another side, we also need monitoring of these patients for any ATT induced or any drug induced adverse reaction. Next slide. So to conclude my talk, anti-tuberculosis treatment should be individualized according to the body weight and comorbid illness present in the patient. So we have to be like comorbid illness. If we say the patient is suffering from hepatitis, the patient is having HIV, the patient is a drug or alcohol abuse, then we have to keep that in mind, and we have to keep a close monitoring of these patients so that we can detect the adverse drug reaction if they develop any at an early stage. So whenever feasible, we should always get a baseline liver function testing done. And at the start of the treatment, we should educate the patient for the possible adverse effect of an anti-tubercular drugs and ask them to report promptly if symptoms of anorexia, vomiting, jaundice, itching, they develop during the course. So that is it. Thank you very much for listening. And if any questions, then you're most welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Saroj, for putting the things in right perspective. This ATT-induced hepatitis, it's like not only the clinicians, they have difference of opinions, even the societies, ATS, BTS, they have such big differences of opinion, and it's been going on for decades now. And there have been so many papers published, still following a concrete principle has not been there. People have their different school of thoughts, and one feels one is better, one feels the other is better, and we are still trying to figure out. So thank you very much for putting the things in perspective. I would like to take a break, and please, I want to welcome Dr. Devan sir, our director. So, well, thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Yes, I'm sorry I could not join in the beginning, but I hope the case presented by Saroj must have gone great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
I was busy in something else, and then I realized that this initiative continues on. Please go ahead. Please carry on with yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So now I open the house for discussion. And please, I know the diabetic is sometimes very difficult to imbibe all of it together. So please, if you have any problem in any slide that you didn't understand, please feel free. I'm sure our expert will be pleased to go back to the slide and explain you if any particular point you didn't understand, because sometimes it's technical point which you may want in common language. So she'll be too pleased to explain.
Yeah, please,
So we
most
can-
welcome for any questions. And because this is something like which is very commonly seen when we put the patient on anti-tubercular treatment. And like Ananya has like very well said that, yes, it's different regimens, different way of reintroducing the drugs. It's typically clinician based, the different guidelines, the different societies, they have their own recommendation. Like I've mentioned the 3 recommendation. What we do in our system, like what I do personally, like I prefer if the patient is a young patient and not malnourished and not much comorbidities, then we would like to start the treatment all at a time at the maximum doses and keep a close watch and get the repeat liver function test after 1 week's time, because there's always a risk of developing drug resistance tuberculosis. We would like to avoid if we keep on incrementing the doses and we linger the regimen for a month's time, like if we go sequential increment in the doses. So that also has to be keep in mind. And please, any questions, welcome, most welcome.
We'll pull up the post-test poll also. One question I would like to ask Dr. Prasenjit. So can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Yes. So generally, what I have seen in our institute, we start when we have to start a modified regimen. We start with streptomycin, levoflox, and ethambutol. You started with levoflox. So I just wanted to know that your school of thought and your rationale, because we just wanted to know what is followed.
Usually it is, I have seen it is streptomycin, levofloxacin, and ethambutol when there's ATD-induced hepatitis. But out here, I saw the chest physician adding INH in the modified package. So I was not very clear why they added. But at the same time, after listening to Dr. Meena's presentation, because the patient was on fluconazole for 2 weeks, the hepatitis could have been sort of hastened by fluconazole as well, because it's hepatotoxic, right, ma'am?
Yes.
It could have been precipitated by fluconazole as well.
Per se, fluconazole is not that hepatotoxic. It may cause hepatotoxicity with interaction with the ATT drugs. Yes. Then it can enhance the hepatotoxicity of the.
Right, ma'am.
Yeah. But this case like looks very much like ATT-induced hepatitis only. But yes, it was a comorbid and very immunocompromised when CD4 counts were less than 50. So the patient
50,
was
right.
malnourished, immunocompromised. He was anemic also. The hemoglobin was 9.7 somewhere, if I remember it correctly. So it was malnourished. So more so region like, so there are many reasons which goes in favor of developing hepatitis in this patient.
Okay, ma'am.
Particular patient.
I have a question to Dr. Meena. Madam, you said rifampicin usually leads to cholestatic like jaundice and increase in alkaline phosphatase, not transaminase. Why is this so, ma'am? Why is this difference with INH and pyrazinamide?
So this is the metabolism which the particular drug has to do. Like it causes, sorry, I won't be able to explain you much in the mechanism thing, but like this has been seen, the studies have shown, the previous experiences have seen that it leads to the increase into cholecystitis, and it is known cholestasis is a known side effect of rifampicin.
Rifampicin. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
If I may add, it is just like rifampicin is prone to have this biphasic effect on bilirubin and the liver, and more on bilirubin because it is a cholestatic. So basically, first there's a small canalicularis in liver which gets blocked by rifampicin. When the rifampicin is given, it gets blocked and the bilirubin gets risen up.
Oops.
But later on, the enzymes are also increased enzyme production is also increased to, for the metabolism of those. So that immediately, that ultimately automatically solves itself. So it's a biphasic. Okay. It will increase, but it will decrease also. So the body just takes time to react to rifampicin, and it is called a biphasic increase because it will increase and it will decrease. We don't do anything special to get the bilirubin down. It's just the canalicularis first gets obstructed, and then the other enzymes are increased in response to that, and the secretion and that blockage is cleared. So that way, rifampicin has this little different biphasic effect on
Okay.
bilirubin.
Basically, it's like an obstructive jaundice kind of
Yes,
thing.
yes, exactly.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Any more question? Anybody? Any question or anything you want to know? Yes, yes, please ask. NRI
Madam, actually, just now we asked a question about a reformation. Whereas the reformation is serum concentrations are more because it is within 1 week. If any hepatitis comes, because of the serum elevations are more whenever we are combining with HIV drugs. That's why one of the reasons. That's why they asked us to see it up to 1 week about the reformation action for one. Number two is the most hepatitis reasoning is pyrogenamide is the drug causing our observation more hepatitis. And the patient itself has got alcoholic habit. It is one of the things causing hepatitis 4 that may be latent. The liver is always already swollen and something damage always there. TB itself is causing a diffuse variety of the hepatitis. And whenever it is latent, and whenever we are inducing any drug like ATT, that may flare up. And another thing, it will boost up with the antiviral drug. That's why in the beginning they told us start immediately the 2 drugs. But after starting 2 drugs, we have got so many problems. Now we are keeping the about 2 weeks. First of all, we are giving the first ATT and observing the things, and afterwards, we need no more hepatitis and no more complications, and we are ruling out iris. Then only we are starting ART drugs. That is the results we are following now because our experience is suggesting like that.
So very well said and very mentioned. In fact, summarize the whole thing. Yeah, pyrogenamide is considered to be the most hepatotoxic among all the ATT drugs, and followed by rifampicin and isoniazid, right? So this is the order which we have learned from our college days until now. We are following the same thing. Yes, because all the ART drugs also TLE and TLD. Now we are using TLD regimen. They all are hepatotoxic. So we
Right.
start complementing together, then it will be add-on hepatotoxicity, and that will further worsen the situation. And we want to be able to rule out whether it is due to the ART induced or due to the ATT induced. So it's like well defined in the program that 2 weeks period is necessary, right? Yeah, thank you.
Please request, please, all of you, please attempt the post-test questions. Yes, sir, we can hear you clearly.
Okay, now there are 2-3 things like the gene expert result was made available on 27th. So, but the gene expert was done before. So confirmation
Yes.
of TB happened on the day the gene expert was done. The 27th should
Right.
not be the date of confirmation.
Okay.
Whenever gene expert was done, the result day is the date of confirmation.
Okay.
Okay, then say after you observed the AST has risen to more than 3 times, whether there were any symptoms. Whether symptoms were there.
Dr. Prasenjit,
You're muted. Just unmute and say, sir.
kindly unmute and please answer the question.
Sorry. So he was having fever, was continuing. He was having nausea, vomiting, can't
Okay, okay, all right.
eat properly.
All right.
So
Another thing that we observed is ALT is less and AST is more.
yes,
So
sir.
usually it happens when there is a person who is taking alcohol, whether the person was also having alcohol history.
No. He is a non-alcoholic teetotaler. He doesn't take alcohol.
All right. Okay, then about the rifampicin, see these 3 guidelines that were there, rifampicin alone, if it also one should consider hepatotoxicity. I think we have to see AST and ALT also. As madam was telling about the cholestatic jaundice, the biliary canaliculi, there is a competitive inhibition for rifampicin to get excreted.
Sir, I think the message was taken wrongly. What I said, ki with rifampicin, we say early rise in bilirubin, and it is a cholestatic type of jaundice, that is ALP, but that doesn't mean ki it will not lead to rise of transaminase levels like AST and ALT also. So it does raise AST and ALT with due course of time. But what's seen early is the cholestatic kind of jaundice as compared to the isoniazid and a pyruvate. It was a comparison.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
I need to comment. Thank you, Saha, Dr. Saha, and Madam Sarojam Meena. Thanks for the presentation. Only thing is, in the presentation, Madam, you mentioned that any symptoms with any rise in the transaminases, that we have to stop. But whatever the guidelines, what NTEP guidelines and other guidelines also says that in presence of symptoms, if it is more than the 3 times, then we have to take into consideration stopping the ATT.
So what I mentioned is like any 3 of the points, if present, then we need to interrupt the treatment. Otherwise, because there it happens like we are treating as a community level. These guidelines are for the community level. Suppose today the patient present with me with nausea, vomiting, and fever, and he was being started 1 week back with ATT, and I ordered LFT, right? So like, you're discussing the 3rd point, and when he come to me after 2 days. After 2 days, usually it's the same day reports the lab doesn't give the reports in our government center.
Right.
We get the report in the same next day or the day after tomorrow.
Good.
So
Right.
this toxicity can increase. So we have to be precautious. If
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have
yeah.
to check the vomiting, if the patient is badly vomiting, then yes, hepatotoxicity is one of the main reason to stop the drugs and the cause of vomiting. The another reason can be the intolerance to the drug. So that we need to rule out by giving antiemetics, we are giving antacids. Yes, that also we have to taken care of it. But yes, any of the 3 points, and there is a rise in like the transaminase, they gets double. The bilirubin is still 1, right? But the patient is symptomatic. I said not any rise. I said if any rise plus the symptoms, then we need to consider for hepatotoxicity and drug interruption for a while till we prove it otherwise.
Symptoms can be because of so symptoms can be because of gastritis.
Yeah, the only thing is why we are telling is whether nausea or vomiting. See, there is always a
So with rise
overlap
of
between.
transaminases, with rise
Yeah.
of transaminases, these symptoms with rise of transaminases, I'm not
Exactly.
talking about 3 times or 5 times. I'm talking about rise of raised levels of enzymes along with these symptoms. Then that is also is one of the indication given in the guidelines to stop the treatment or to withhold the treatment for time being. Hence, proved.
Gastritis.
Madam, just to answer your this one, what I mean to say is why the program guidelines has made like that is for the guidelines are to see that it will be in the, it should be used properly in the peripheries. I agree. The tertiary care center, when you are dealing, it is totally different. When periphery, when they deal, it is totally different. Because always there is a mimicking of symptoms of gastritis because all ATTs causes gastritis also. So what we have suggested in the guidelines is because of that only for the utilization in the periphery that whenever there is a 3 times the upper normal limit, because it's a normal phenomena, normal pharmacological phenomena that when you give ATT, there will be a rise. But the 3 times cutoff has been given to take a clinical decision.
Sir, totally agree with you. I think you're taking it too wrongly. What I'm saying, like 3 times in the absence of symptoms, then you have to stop. But the symptoms are there, then you have to give consideration. You have to keep in mind for the diagnosis of hepatotoxicity. I totally agree. Drug intolerance, drug gastritis is the most commonest when we start the treatment with the patients. So it's like both the things we have to take in consideration. If the patient is saying, I vomited once in the morning, I will definitely not stop the treatment. But if the patient will complain for last 5 to 6 days, I am not able to eat and I'm vomiting after whatever I'm take, I vomited 5 to 6 times in a day, then I need to consider for hepatotoxicity. That is what we all do in our clinical practices also.
Madam, even if 2 to 3 times or 5 days, gastritis is a first possibility rather than hepatitis, because the enzymes has to be more than 3 times, no?
Sir, right now we are not talking about gastritis.
Because,
I think the topic
madam,
is
initial-
toxicity of ATT drugs.
Initial 2 to 3 weeks, that readjustment hepatic enzyme rise will be there. That adjustment for the ATT that you have started, that will rise up to 2 weeks. Up to 2 weeks, there is a rise. 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Only then it will start coming down.
Okay, so thank you, sir. So post-test poll, I see only less than 50% are still voted. Please, can you please have the answer so that we can take out the post-test poll and put the feedback poll? And anybody else, any other comments? And thank you, NTI Bangalore, for your valuable comments and insights. The next session, the same session we'll be having on 25th for the Delhi and UP. And anybody please welcome to join. I think we are coming to a close of the session now. As there are no more questions, I would like to thank my team members, and I would like to thank Dr. Saroj for the didactic and for the excellent presentation. I hope we have cleared some doubt. And in case if there still you people have any doubt and you go back and you want to clear something, you're most welcome to email it to us, and we would be doing it whatever needful has to be done. Thank you very much. Please attend the feedback.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Prasanjit, again. Thank you. It was
Thank you
excellent,
so much.
and I hope to see you again, you
Absolutely.
and your people from your college more and more on this.
Thank you, ma'am.
platform.
Thank you so very much. God
Thank you.
bless you, ma'am. Thank you.